Trading can be a tough old game, and most of us don't make it any easier on ourselves. I mean, have you ever had those moments where you look inside your mind for your inner trading coach and all you end up finding is your inner critic? Yeah, your inner trader is a complete w***er. It's true, most people's are, but the great news is there are things you can do to not only stop that negative inner voice, but to actually flip it and make it work in your favor instead. So in part 2 of this video, I will show you evidence-based things that you can do that are advised by neuroscientists to control and stop this negative inner voice. But before we do that, first of all, let's discuss what's actually going on in your head, how it affects you and your trading, and why it's so important that we get this under control immediately. So despite all the great advice that we should be living life more in the present, this isn't actually something we're biologically built to do. Of course, it's a good idea to be more present since it helps you to engage with people and better deal with certain mental health issues. But realistically, we spend so much time thinking about the past and the future that it's actually known as our default state. That's what our brain reverts to when we're not otherwise engaged, and sometimes even when it is otherwise engaged. So on average, we spend about 30 to 50% of our daily awake time in this default state. And a lot of that involves being in an internal conversation with ourselves. It sounds crazy, but this sort of introspection is what we've evolved to do. So this is the process that allows us to manage our experiences from the past and plan or prepare for the future. And you know what? We're extremely talkative. It's been estimated that our internal talk runs at a rate of between 4,000 to 6,000 words per minute. That's about 30 minutes worth of out loud talking at an average speed, or about 2 or 3 times this video, every single minute. And you thought I was a chatterbox. This internal voice does a lot of good for us, but it also causes a lot of harm as well. You know, humans are built with a negativity bias, and our negative inner talk causes us to narrowly focus on the source of our negativity at the exclusion of practically everything else. In fact, a study from 2010 found that what participants were thinking about was a better predictor of their happiness than what they were actually doing. So you may even be succeeding at what you're doing, but if that inner voice tells you that it's no good and you're crap and so on, you're still going to be unhappy. What a nice bloke your inner voice is, eh? But that's okay, you might think. I'd rather be crying in my Ferrari than smiling in my Skoda anyway. You know, I've heard that comment from a lot of people whenever I talk about happiness. It seems to be particularly young men who unfortunately think it's not cool to prioritize your happiness and well-being. So instead, let's discuss how negative inner talk can cause more damage other than just feeling down, and also how it can specifically ruin your trading performance. So I think I know more than most people that trading can be stressful. About 10 years ago, trading-related stress led me into an emergency clinic in Switzerland as my health deteriorated. And after that, I was extremely ill for weeks. This stuff isn't a game. But the funny thing about stress is that it's actually a good thing. It's an adaptive response that helps our body to overcome threatening situations, our fight or flight response. But there's a problem when it stops being adaptive and it becomes chronic. In other words, when it stops being something temporary and becomes something more long-term instead. This will have lots of negative health consequences and can lead you to becoming very ill. But there are also ways that it directly harms your trading as well. You see, when you're experiencing stress, your decision making is not going to be up to scratch. Your negativity bias will be amplified and you'll start taking much bigger risks. This can ultimately lead a bad situation getting exponentially worse very, very quickly. This is likely to be part of the reason why someone feeling stressed about a losing trade will quickly go into a negative spiral where they panic, add to the loss again and again, before eventually coming out of their stress-fueled haze a few hours later, having totally burned out their account just trying to claw back a 1% drawdown. We've all been there. But what does this have to do with the negative inner voice in our mind? Well, that voice was found to be the main culprit in keeping stress active, the little bastard. We can even create a chronic physiological stress reaction just by thinking. So if we don't get our inner voice under control, that inner talk, it can sabotage our trading by increasing our stress levels and lead our cells to believe that we're in a hostile situation, which causes them to suppress normal functions that keep us healthy and safe. Hello, illness. And you know what? People say if you don't take time for your health, you'll be forced to take a break when you get ill. So you want to be proactive about this stuff. Okay, but what if you believe that you're someone that thrives in stressful situations? For the most part, I think I am as well. We can also look at top athletes, legends who manage under pressure and actually excel under pressure. But this is because their inner voice in those situations is a positive one that's pushing them onto greatness. People like Michael Jordan, who craved the pressure, Tiger Woods in his heyday, or Simone Biles, the greatest gymnast of all time. But wait, remember what happened to Simone Biles just this year in the Olympics? She called it the twisties, which is a term that's specific to gymnastics. But a similar thing to that happens in all skills that require automatic behaviours. We're bombarded with information, stimuli all the time, and all of the thoughts and feelings that are triggered by it. Our attention helps us to filter this information to make sure that anything that doesn't matter to us is filtered out, so we can focus on the important things. Now, most of our attention is involuntary, like when there's a loud bang somewhere and we turn in the direction of that noise. But as humans, we can also consciously focus our attention on the tasks that need it. However, when we're overwhelmed with emotion, our inner voice will cause us to narrow our attention on the source of that negativity, whatever the obstacle is that we're facing. It will exclude most other things except for that particular obstacle. So in most cases, that process will serve us well and help us to overcome these problems when we encounter them in life. But when we're dealing with a learned skill, something that's automatic for us, then we have a big problem on our hands. Trading as a whole isn't an automatic skill, but important parts of it are. Especially for those of you who have become consistently profitable, part of what allows you to perform the way you do is that you do a lot of it without having to consciously think about it all. You have automatic behaviours. The way you chunk the chart and see the context as a whole, making decisions in the moment about how to manage your trade, reacting to price movements. Sure, it's not a motor skill like doing a backflip, but there are still automatic behaviours involved. So when you try to perform learned skills under extreme pressure, your negative inner voice will narrow your attention too much on the individual components and basically start to dismantle this automatic skill. It will break down the complicated scripts that you've learned that you can execute without thinking and make it that you have to think about it. In other words, it will unlink you from the skill. So by over-focusing your attention on the individual parts rather than the total sum of the parts, you end up in a situation where you go through paralysis by analysis. Now, you might have felt this yourself when you have a trade running that's going into a loss and the price is continuing to move against you, and if you don't have a stop loss there, you know you need to make a decision, but you don't even know what to analyze in that situation. You don't know how to read the markets. If you weren't in a trade, you'd be able to read what was going on and make the right call, but in the moment it starts to feel like you're just guessing. Now that's not a good place to be in if you're trying to execute a skill as complex as trading and if there's money on the line. Now, some of you will be hearing all of this and feeling like the penny just dropped for you. Suddenly you're seeing where things have been going wrong and you're eager to get this negative voice under control so you can dramatically improve your trading performance. But some of you still won't be convinced yet. So let's cap off this video by talking about some basic neuroscience. A lot of what we've spoken about so far that's affected by your negative inner voice are things that rely on your executive functions. So your executive functions are the foundation of what lets you steer your thoughts and behaviors in the way that you want. They're basically what allows you to solve problems, multitask, reason logically, and control yourself. So this means you're able to manage work, trading, your everyday life with intelligence, creativity, and general competence. For example, your working memory is part of your executive functions, and this is what allows you to keep relevant information in the present and block out needless information and distractions. So these sorts of things demand conscious effort rather than our automatic mode. You can think of something like trading, for example. That requires a lot of focus and concentration. It's going to demand a lot from your executive functions. But the problem is, your executive functions have limited capacity. Our brains are so brilliant that they'll automatically clear other things out of the way to save mental bandwidth for our executive functions. This is why, for example, we form habits, which are automatic solutions to recurring problems that we encounter, or why we have strange quirks, like our tendency to default to additive solutions rather than subtractive ones, which is something we'll talk about in a future video. So our brain operates in a way that tries to clear things out of the way to leave resources for our important executive functions. And yet, our negative inner voice gets through. That negative inner voice takes up neural capacity, and it gets us narrowly focusing on the negative source of the inner dialogue. Now, as a result of that, this negative inner voice jams our executive functions. It stops us being able to perform focused tasks because now we're dealing with a dual task, which we're not designed to do. So what's the end outcome? Your attention is divided and blurred. Your working memory is negatively impacted, and your ability to trade at your best is destroyed, and so are your results. This is not open for debate. Your negative inner voice is going to damage not only your trading, but other aspects of your life as well if it continues to get out of hand. So why am I telling you all of this? Well, firstly, because I want you to know that everyone goes through it. We all have that negative inner voice. And in fact, by normalizing an experience, by knowing that you're not the only person that's going through it, that's actually one of the ways to cut out that negative self-talk. So that's one of the reasons that I want to tell you about this. You know, trading's full of people who want to look cool and borderline sociopathic, making it seem like they've suppressed all emotions. But that's not true. Everyone has this negative inner talk. And the second reason for explaining all this to you is because by showing you how important this is, I hope that you'll now put all of your effort into trying to overcome this negative self-talk, even if it's just for the good of your trading. And to help you accomplish that, in the very next video that will be out in just a matter of days, I'll share with you a toolbox of things you can do to not only stop this negative self-talk, but to actually start using your inner dialogue in a much better way. Now, these are evidence-based solutions backed by neuroscience. We're not talking about some sort of wishy-washy new age thing that's just coming from my opinion. These are real things that are going to work for you. So make sure you're subscribed with the notifications turned on so that you can make sure you don't miss that video. And I'd like you to do me a little favor. Down in the comment section, let me know about your relationship with your inner voice and whether the information in this video has opened your eyes to it all a bit more. Let me know what you found most interesting, let me know what you found most helpful, and just leave a comment there. Also, hit that thumbs up button if you like this one and you're ready for the next video. I'll see you then. I'm really looking forward to it. Take care.